They charge me with fine, but we have to establish this. So he sit back and he said, let me make a phone call. This dude really said, let me make a phone call. So I'm like, all right. So he leave out the holding cell, and the constables come and they come get me and they remove me from the holding cell to another holding cell. Right. So the one cell I'm in is for lawyer-client conversations, and then they put me in a whole another room. Right. Anyway, like 20 minutes go by. He come back. He say, "Do you know Nathan Shanker?" I'm like, it's impossible for me to know who Nathan Shanker is. I have no idea who this person is. He said, well, he's the head of the public defender's office here in Westchester. I said, oh, all right. He said, Nathan Shanker advised me to not do what you asked me to do. I said, okay, well, then you're fired. Remember, I'm saying all this because that don't work. It don't go that way. Just because you tell your lawyer he fired don't mean he fired. It don't work like that. But I say it because I'm like, you're fired. Because I'm going to do it. If you don't go in this courtroom and say it, I don't care who Nathan Shanker is. If you don't go into this courtroom and say this, I am going to say it. So, and this is a factual experience of mine. He said, I see you're from Coachville. This is what he said. He just like twist the whole joint. I see you from Coachville. He said, by any chance you happen to be from the Oak Street Housing Projects? I said, absolutely. I'm from the Oak Street Housing Projects. He said, I'm from the Oak Street Housing Projects too. I'm like, impossible, right? Impossible. He said, no, I'm not from the actual projects, but I live over the hill that overlooks the projects. When I was a kid, they were building them projects. So I'm like, immediately I knew that this is lawyering 101. This is him trying to ingratiate himself with me to make me feel comfortable so he can get back into the position he needs to be in, to be an officer of the court, so he can do what he needs to do, right? I'm like, yeah, I don't care nothing about that, bro, because I just don't see what that got to do with anything. You either go in here and say what I told you to say, or I'm going to say it myself. So anyway, he walk out. He get up, huff and puff, he get red in the face, he leave. So I go into the courtroom, and I had a few people there who was supporting me. It's one of the first times ever that I had people in the back of the courtroom there to support me, right? So the hearing starts, and the first thing I say is, Your Honor, is this being recorded? And she was like, everything is on the record in my courtroom. I said, well, I want to fire my lawyer because he's not doing what I told him to do. She said, he doesn't have to do what you tell him to do. I'm like, all right, fine. I understand, right? He doesn't have to do it. But he's no longer my lawyer. I could represent myself here today because the only thing that needs to be established is prima facie, which is basically, was a crime committed, and am I, I'm not the defendant, but is the defendant most likely the person who did it? That's the only thing that the Commonwealth needs to establish here. So with that being said, the only thing I'm going to say here is that my due process rights have been violated. Now, mind you, there's two different approaches to due process legally, right? So they might not, as lawyers themselves, they don't know which angle I'm talking about. They just hear me saying my due process rights have been violated. So they don't know if it's constitutionally. They don't know what angle I'm talking about. So she was like, looked down some paperwork on the desk, and she's like, "Oh, you're Mr. Smith." I'm like, "Yeah, I talked to you almost, 3 weeks ago, because this hearing was supposed to be on the 12th, Now it's on the 19th, but that, whatever the case may be. And I told you then my due process rights was violated. You told me you was going to handle it before the preliminary hearing. I'm at the preliminary hearing, and now we all looking like we don't know what Mr. Smith is talking about. Recess. Literally recess. She said recess, and I guess they went to lunch. Because I sat back for almost 3 hours by myself in a holding cell with nobody talking to me. When I get back in the courtroom, right? Literally, before I could start talking, a person started to walk in the courtroom from the back. And he literally said to me, Mr. Smith, my name is Brett Bender. Do you mind if I enter into this particular criminal action? I'm like, yeah, because I don't know who you are, but sure. So he stands right in the aisle. He don't get on no stand. He stands like almost next to me and says, Your Honor, the mishap comes out of my court. The warrant was signed and issued from my court. I'm the issuing authority for the warrant, and I believe this is where the mishap happens at. It was my clerk's fault. I'm literally, this is no lie, the man is blaming his clerk for, I guess, me not knowing that I was under arrest. So I'm looking up like, what the hell? I don't know who Brett Bender is. I really don't. Even while he's talking, I'm like, so she said, thank you very much, Judge. I look again like, this is a judge that walked into a preliminary hearing to correct a matter. It never got corrected because, long story short, I kept saying my due process rights have been violated. I never stopped saying it the whole time. And since that was the case, right, I was put back in a holding cell, and Jamie Green, who I just fired, comes to the holding cell and says, listen, we're working on your bail right now. The judge wants you to get processed, and I believe you can get ROR. I'm a career criminal. I've been getting locked up as an adult since 1997. I have already 2 state numbers under my belt. I am literally considered a violent, reoffending person, right? He tells me, if you get fingerprinted, right, they'll drop the particular statute violation of robbery, like which was a felony 1, and they'll bring it down to a felony 3, but they're going to add terroristic threats to the action. All you got to do is get fingerprinted, and you can go out on your own recognizance. Released on your own recognizance. Now, mind you, at the time, I'm not making an excuse for this. I was getting high, and all I wanted to do once I heard that was go get high. You telling me I could leave right now? He said, yeah. You just got to go out to West Goshen Police Department and get fingerprinted, and then you will be released on your own recognizance. Okay. I get back in the courtroom. The judge had this lengthy thing about bail and this, that, this whole conversation with another clerk that comes into the courtroom. Boom. I get transported by these 2 white people who are constables who now are having a different conversation with me. They say, man, who are you? I said, I'm the guy who got in the vehicle this morning and y'all was telling me I was talking crazy and y'all ain't really want to hear what I was saying. She said, this is the wife, we've never seen nobody go into the courtroom and present themselves and stand up like that in the courtroom. I'm impressed. The driver, the male, he ain't say a word. You could tell he was whatever he wasn't even trying to acknowledge any intelligence on my part. He was like, yeah, whatever, boom. So I get to West Goshen, I get fingerprinted, it's crickets in this joint. The cops ain't doing no talk. Usually cops, they just, especially when a criminal's in the room, they talk the craziest stuff. How they arrested these people and kicked them. They say this type of stuff. Kicked in doors and did that and threw somebody on the ground. They say all this in your presence like they're superheroes. Like they're real crime fighters and all they do is just stop crime and they boast about wild encounters. Wild, it's a criminal around. It was crickets. It literally was so quiet in there that it was almost uncomfortable because I ain't know, whatever the case may be, like, should I say something? Should I be like, yeah, I told y'all my due process. I ain't even say, I'm like, man, I ain't doing that because I ain't trying to mess up, what I got going on. Mind you, I was shooting from the hip the whole time. If they would have really questioned me on it, I would have no idea. I wouldn't have no response. But they don't know this. I'm just pow, pow, pow. I'm shooting from the hip. I want to get high. Anyway, I get back to the courtroom. They literally released me without an address because at the time I was living in a shelter called Safe Harbor. But I didn't even supply an address. I didn't even say what my address was going to be. And mind you, this is going to come back. Like all of this comes back because down the road, there's a whole nother incident that happens about them saying I failed to appear to a court date. And I'm like, where did you send the mail to? Because that's a notice has to come. I have to receive the notice and understand I have a court date for me to fail to appear. That's a whole nother joint. I don't give them an address. They literally let me walk out of the courtroom. It was the first time that I did that. And that's the results I got. By standing up and saying my due process rights have been violated, I literally was allowed to walk out of the courtroom. I still had a criminal action against me. I still had to appear for my arraignment that was down the road, my formal arraignment that was down the road. But I was free. I was out on a robbery case, right? And this is where I'm at in typing it up in this book because in all actuality, I don't want to push this book out there because I beat the criminal justice system in some type of way. That's not it. It's me establishing to the taxpayer the other side of the game. Not because I want you to know how certain people are treated in the country, but because you can be treated the same way. Matter of fact, you are actually treated the same way. It's just in a more formal and nice setting. A lawyer comes, he comes from a big law firm, right? And he tells you, oh, let me handle this whole thing. I got it, sir. You, sir, are given latitude. You're giving or getting a particular treatment because you financially fall in a different bracket than me. So you won't never have to worry about being your door kicked in and you dragged off to jail. If you're accused of a crime,